Viewer discretion is heavily advised for this particular segment. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to reconsider if you want to watch the rest of this segment. You still here?
See, okay. All right, there's probably.
Now you on the video, you from? Yeah, you see some of the fluid coming out. That fluid is actually getting down there.
Yeah, right there. That's what I mean, right? That's illuminating. Okay.
All right. Welcome to the Convict Podcast, folks. I'm your host, Moliere Dimanche, and today we're going to talk about the murder and cover-up of the death of inmate Timothy Thomas. So that officer that you saw at the end of that little intro there, that's the man who killed him, Officer Gamble. You know, and it's funny, I did some research on him prior to doing this segment. And, you know, I just observed his social media profiles. And prior to working for the Department of Corrections, he was just some Joe Dirt weirdo. I mean, like, it goes back to what I was saying about the Department of Corrections hiring the nastiest, like, most disgusting human beings they could find. His whole social media consisted of confessing to being an alcoholic, confessing that there was something wrong with his mind, tweeting about poop, and other posts about potentially raping women in some ways I'm not even going to get into. But, you know, he was just somebody who just literally sat around the house smelling his fart. Think about that. And this is somebody who has the power of life and death in his hands over thousands of people at Lake Butler, of all places. So this guy, he gets off the couch and goes and applies to be a correctional officer, and he gets the job. So now he's working at Lake Butler, and his ways that I saw of how he was living prior to becoming a correctional officer, they crossed over into the prison, and it cost someone their life. So we're going to start with how Timothy Thomas was so unfortunate as to cross paths with this sick officer. So let me first explain to you guys how in the Department of Corrections, when you have a medical call out, it's a very odd process. Your call out is going to be at like 5, 6 in the morning, sometimes earlier than that. And it's mandatory that you come out to eat breakfast, even if you don't go. And breakfast is always in the wee hours of the morning. So he has a medical call out, Thomas does, because his ankle's swollen and he's walking around the compound with a cane, and he's set to see the doctor. Now, keep in mind, the doctor's probably not going to be there till about 8 o'clock. It's just all of the inmates on the compound are rounded up early in the morning, taken to a different part of the compound, and they just wait until the medical staff comes on for hours. They just wait. So he has his call out to go check on his foot, and they force him to go to breakfast. So he comes out of the dorm and he asks an officer, you know, can I just go back to the dorm until the doctors get here? Because, you know, I don't feel like eating. They tell him shut the fuck up and all of that correction officer talk. And 4 officers surround him and they beat him. Now, his DR says that he was instructed to go inside of the chow hall. This is the words of Officer Gamble. He says he instructed the inmate to go inside of the chow hall. The inmate refused, started shouting and flailing his hands. Now, here's another thing. Just like with crimes on the street, like when people get prosecuted, they have to go to court for a charge. There are elements to a crime. There are elements to DRs too. And one of the elements to lock somebody up for disorderly conduct is literally, it says this, shouting and flailing arms. And that's the prerequisite to locking an inmate up for disorderly conduct or disobeying a verbal order. So flailing his arms. Every single DR is written like this. There are thousands upon thousands of DRs that says an inmate was flailing his arms. Who talks like that? It's cut and paste to meet the written letter of the law. That's all that is. He's flailing his arms and he's shouting. And since he refused to submit to hand restraints, force was applied. Now, essentially, he died for flailing his arms around in the air, according to what's on the record. So the truth of the matter is he was a writ writer. He was somebody who did not mind filing a grievance about prison conditions, right? Remember, these are always the guys that get killed first, okay? So they take him down, and Officer Gamble, again, puts the chemical agents in his mouth and sprays him. He sprays him with chemical agents and then puts the canister in his mouth and blasts him. He sprays him in the mouth with these chemical agents. So they take him to confinement, and on the way to confinement, his medical record is falsified. It says that he's cleared for using chemical agents. It's like, hold up. We have to step back here. How could you possibly know that an inmate going to the chow hall is cleared prior to using chemical agents on him for not wanting to eat? First of all, that's not a justifiable reason for spraying somebody with tear gas, especially the crowd control canister. It's almost as if inmates have to walk around with a pass that says, I cannot be sprayed with chemical agents. That's what they do. When you get passes in prison, they give you a pass to attach to your ID card, and you have to walk around with it. So if you have a bottom bunk pass and you're walking around the compound and the officer sees you sit down on a bunk that's not on the top, they're going to ask you for that pass, and you flip your ID card around and show them that. You have to, it's necessary now for inmates to say, I have a pass that says you can't gas me. In his medical file, the man had asthma, and he was not ever supposed to be subjected to chemical agents. So somehow, Officer Gamble knew this, and he checks it off. Oh, inmate was cleared to use chemical agents. How the hell you know that? You don't have the medical file with you while you're escorting inmates to the chow hall. I mean, that's so unreasonable, but they get away with this stuff. So they take him to confinement, and his bunkie alerts the police and says, hey, my cellmate stopped breathing. When he got to confinement, everybody in the dorm was trying to get the officer's attention for hours, saying, look, there's a man in that room having problems breathing. Now, according to the autopsy report, there was so much chemical agents in his mouth that it singed his lungs. That much. And it's the same thing that happened to Reuben Harris. And speaking of Reuben Harris, I caught another one of those correctional officers commenting on the video and deleting his comments. I'm going to get to him later on down the line. But this man's lungs were singed. They were burned. That was imminent death. There's no recovery from that. There's no surgery, especially from a prison doctor that's going to help unsinge your lungs. You know, they don't have as many dead people as they have buried at these prisons. They don't have lungs to just up and give to these inmates. So while he was on his way to confinement, another officer named Clinton Hodges plants a weapon in his property. He writes this old bogus DR, and he says that while he was packing the property, he found a shank. And, you know, these correctional officers, I know officers who keep relics of homemade weapons, inmate weapons, in their houses. They take them home and they have like a collection of the stuff at their houses. These guys own tons of these chemical of these shanks, and they bring them to work to plant on inmates, and they keep stashes of these homemade weapons on the compound. Some of them keep them in the captain's office, so if they want to set an inmate up, they're gonna come and plant that knife. So the inmates in confinement, they tell the staff that this man is, he's not breathing. Y'all come give him some help. Can you believe they came and performed a cell extraction to get a dead man out of his cell? Now, it's possible he was not dead, but he was dying at the least. If he wasn't already dead, he was so severely injured that he was immobile. He couldn't move. He couldn't get up. So they come and perform a damn cell extraction. Jeez. They perform a cell extraction. And I noticed, if you look at this document of his special housing record, they crossed out the cell that he died in. So it was hard to see at first because it's like written underneath in the black part to where you can barely see it, but the cell changed. Now, from my deductions, I've concluded that after they took him out of the cell with that other inmate, they took him to another cell that was on a different wing. Like the wings are set up like T's, okay? There'd be 3 wings in the dorm. My elbow would be wing 1. This would be wing 2, and this would be wing 3. And each wing has about 40 cells in it. They take him off of this wing and throw him into this wing. And there's a sally port in between, so they're completely separated. They take him to another wing and they put him in a cell by himself. That's the crazy part, because when you look at the initial cell he was assigned to with the other inmate, there's a U right next to the letter, right? Or right next to the cell number. That means upper. So if there's 2 inmates in the cell, one's gonna be assigned that cell number with an L, which means the lower bunk, and the other one's gonna be the same cell number with a U, means upper bunk. So it's L and U. The cell they assigned him to didn't have a letter. So that means he was in there alone, because it didn't matter whether he was in the lower bunk or the upper bunk. And that's where they finished the job. So this information came to me from someone who was invested in getting this story out there. And I dug a little bit further, and I managed to make contact with the mother of his children. She informed me that they told her he died of a heart attack, and they closed this case. So the medical examiner closed the case, right? And said that he died of a heart attack, and then asked her, can we bury him at the prison? You don't even need to pay for no funeral expenses. You don't got to go through the hassle of coming to pick him up. Can we bury him here at Lake Butler? She told them, hell no. So she gets the body and performs a second autopsy. And guess what that reveals? That wasn't noted in the initial medical examiner's notes, that they applied chemical agents to him and that it had been sprayed into his mouth. How did the medical examiner miss that? So she calls the other medical examiner and says, how come you didn't tell me chemical agents were used? Oh, I didn't know chemical agents were used. What the hell are you examining? I mean, honestly, his body's covered in the stuff. The boot print, okay. Take a look at these images from the autopsy, still images. Look at the knots on his head. He was bludgeoned. Knots on his head, knots on his cheeks, he has a cut on his eyeball. That's indicative that he was kicked in his face. Now, look at it at his chest. That's a boot print. And it's consistent with the boots that correctional officers wear. It's the exact same design of the sole, for God's sake. I mean, like, they kicked him that hard. It peeled his skin off. And my guess is that the chemical agents already ruined his skin to where his skin was vulnerable to any kind of breakage or penetration. And stomping him out with them correctional officer boots tore his skin to the point where it left a boot print. A boot print outlined in chemical agents, folks. And nobody's in jail for this. Nobody's on death row for this. Okay? So, he's covered in all of these bruises, and the daily record of special housing, the times are whited out. Now, you know, it's so odd that they white this stuff out because, you know, it's clear what time all of this stuff supposedly happened. If you look at the log number on these reports, if you know how to read it, it tells you how everything transpires. One series of the numbers represents the institution. Lake Butler is institution number 208. And, you know, of course, 2018 will represent the time or the year that it happened. And anything else would represent exactly when it happened. So the 550 in this case indicates that this stuff began at 5:50 in the morning. Why are the times on the daily record of special housing whited out? That is very odd. I mean, was it because they lied about the time of death? Is there something in this date that will prove, you know, that he died at a different time? I mean, all of this stuff asserts that it happened on March 30th, but the website says he died on April Fool's Day. So, it's funny because when you look at the investigating officer, Letitia Bennett, in her report, she actually asserts that she delivered the DR to him and that he didn't need staff assistance on April 2nd. That's the craziest thing in the world to me. So, you know, the dates are confused, but I think the key piece of evidence lies in whatever times they whited out of these reports. So his arms were broken, his body was mutilated, they stomped him, and then in an effort to cover up the fact that he was sprayed with these chemical agents, in an effort to impede the autopsy findings, guess what they do? Now, this is something. Remember, I've been told y'all the correctional guards are the new Gestapo. I mean, it's secret, but there's no secret about that. But this method right here, I haven't even read about this in the history books. Like, this is something so terroristic and like just unheard of. I haven't even seen this in a movie. But guess what they do to hide the fact that they use chemical agents on him? They poke holes in his legs to drain his blood out so that a toxicology report can't be conducted. It's like, wow, like you try to drain this man's blood. That is tampering with evidence in a way I've never, ever heard of. They poked hole, they punctured this man's legs, his veins, to drain all of the blood out. So that there would be no conclusive toxicology report to show that he died as a result of these chemical agents or whatever else they may have put in. Remember, the three guards who were in the Ku Klux Klan that got arrested from the same institution, they were plotting to kill an inmate and inject him with insulin, put a fishing pole in his hand and made it look like he drowned. So, you know, these guys are they're real crafty. They're a whole nother level of terrorists. So it's just insane. So the evidence is laid out for you folks. I mean, this was so obvious. And the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the Office of the Inspector General, they already have all of this stuff, plus more. They have all kinds of other evidence that we can't get to. So this was a grand cover-up. You got this old weird ass dude then was at home making tweets about farting and smelling it and all of these sick ideas, decides to get up off the couch, go become a correctional officer, and the type of person he is, it's obvious that he's going to wreck somebody's whole existence. He's going to kill someone. All of that misery that he was soaked in at his house, it's coming out now because now he's somebody. He's somebody important. He's somebody to be reckoned with. Right. So that's the whole story on Timothy Thomas. He was his file was closed and then reopened after they saw that it was taken serious and that there was a follow-up autopsy to it. So they reopened up his case and they've been investigating over a year now. What's taking so long? Why isn't the medical examiner in jail? The medical examiner, first of all, didn't detect the chemical agents on purpose. How could you have possibly, what did you actually perform that helped you conclude that this man died of a heart attack? Where did that come from? That's an obvious lie because you obviously wasn't doing any work. And you made that finding. So, I mean, if you examined his heart, before you get to the heart, you know, there's the outer shell of the body. Would you just skip it? Did you clean it off? Did you, I mean, this is like Nazi Germany. This is the type of stuff that they were doing to the Jewish people during the Holocaust. You know what I mean? This is a premeditated, orchestrated, cleverly, this is the intricate cover-up. It stretches from, the medical examiner is a part of this shit. Like, the medical examiner is helping them do this. You know what I mean? And FDLE and the Inspector General's office, I mean, the Inspector General has an office, the senior inspector's office is at Lake Butler. It's there. So, I mean, the head honchos are on call. And nobody's been arrested for this. None of y'all actually allowed this case to close without even looking at the bruises. I mean, come on. How was he taken out of the cell because he suffered from, he wasn't breathing, and then he goes to a complete, he doesn't go to medical. They take him out of the cell. They don't take him to medical. They take him to a room where nobody else is there and beat him to death. Spray him with chemical agents and beat him to death. They've got to go. And it's getting to the point, I don't know what, forget about Mark Inch. What is Ron DeSantis? What does he have going on? You know, right today, he needs to fire everybody in Department of Corrections. Everybody, like all of the inspectors, the officers, the wardens, replace everyone the same day. And I'm not saying that loosely. I mean that because if I have to run for governor just to fire everybody in Department of Corrections and replace them with new people, I swear to God, I'll do it. I will do it. And, you know, I'll double their pay. Give people incentive. I will double everybody's pay to give people incentive to come and work there. And everybody who's ever worked in Department of Corrections has to go because this is a culture. This is a culture, folks. This is something, I mean, who is that bold to where they would just try to get away with something like this? This is systemic, folks. This ain't nothing new. This has been done before, and the perpetrator here has witnessed this done before, so he knew he could do it. How a year goes by after the case is closed quick, heart attack, or K2. It's reopened when his family takes it seriously, and now it's been going on for a year. I guarantee you that officer is probably still around inmates. You know what I mean? This stuff is maddening. But folks, this is a call to action. Share this video immediately. Send it to every last one of your representatives. And make sure today you're registered to vote. Because, you know, the leaders we have, they're not going to do a damn thing. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be a whole new breed of people governing this state. And I mean that. So we got to take it to the next level because, you know, reaching out, we have some legislators big shout out to Diane Hart, because she's been going to every prison, but there's only so much she can do. You know what I mean? They're keeping information away from her. You know what I mean? She'd make a great governor, by the way, just so y'all know. But we have to change it all. You know what I mean? It's how many dead people can we tell you about? First of all, how many of these frightening Gestapo-style homicides and cover-ups can we inform you folks about, and you still don't do nothing? Y'all got to go. Everybody's got to go, because this is getting outrageous, and I'll be damned if they take the power away from the people. Not while I'm here. You know what I mean? I'll assume that title, and I'll get it right. If it's that hard to implement body cameras, we got to get ready for the next couple of elections. Get registered to vote. Get this word out about Timothy Thomas, and share these images from his autopsy, because these haven't been seen before. So I'm hitting hard, folks, and I'm not going to let up. And we already proved Mark Inch is tuning in. You know what I mean? Stalking my damn social media and everything. So send it to him anyway, because he probably was the first person to watch this video. And let's see, if nothing is done this week, don't expect them to ever do nothing. Just get ready to vote all of them out of there. Till next time.